It was a cold Friday evening in downtown Chicago. The city streets were busy as usual, but inside the tall glass doors of a fancy restaurant called the Velvet Note, everything was warm and quiet. Waiters moved like dancers, customers spoke, in soft voices, and classical music played in the background. Among the staff was a young woman named Emma. She was only 22, but life had made her older in many ways. Her black hair was tied in a neat bun, and her dark eyes looked tired, but she never let that stop her from wearing a gentle smile. She was known as the kind and hard-working waitress who never complained, no matter how long the shift or how difficult the customer. Emma had been working at the restaurant for almost a year now. It was not her dream job. She didn't wake up every day excited to serve expensive food to rich people who rarely noticed her. But she needed the money. Her mother was sick and could no longer work. Her younger brother Adam was just 14 and still in school. Emma had dropped out of her music college after only one semester to take care of her family. They lived in a small two-bedroom apartment, and every dollar she earned helped them get by. Sometimes she skipped meals so her brother could eat better, but no one at the restaurant knew that. She didn't talk about her problems. She just did her job with quiet grace. That night, as the snow began to fall lightly outside, Emma was assigned to table 12. It was a corner table meant for two people, but tonight only one man was sitting there. He looked different from the usual guests. He was wearing a dark blue suit that looked expensive, but not flashy. His silver hair was neatly combed back, and his eyes were sharp, almost too observant. He didn't glance at his phone or stare at the menu for long. He simply waited, calmly looking around the restaurant as if searching for something. Emma walked up to him with her usual polite smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Velvet Note. May I get you something to drink?" The man looked up and studied her face for a moment. His eyes weren't creepy, but they had a way of making someone feel like he could see through them. He gave a small smile. "Just water, thank you." She nodded and turned to walk away, but he stopped her with a question. "Do you like working here?" Emma blinked. That was not a question customers usually asked. "It's a good place to work," she replied politely. The man chuckled. "That's not what I asked. I asked if you like it." Emma paused. She didn't know how to answer. She didn't want to say no. That would be unprofessional. But she didn't want to lie either. So she smiled again and said, "It's a job, sir. It helps me take care of my family." He raised an eyebrow. "Honest? Answer. Rare these days." She excused herself and went to get his water. As the night went on, Emma noticed that the man was watching the restaurant more than his plate. He barely touched his food, only tasting a little of the main dish. When Emma came to check on him again, he asked another strange question. "Did you ever want to be something else? A doctor? A singer? An artist?" Emma was caught off guard again. No one ever asked about her dreams. "Not here," she answered softly. "I wanted to be a musician. I used to play the piano, but that was a long time ago." The man's eyes lit up. "Piano? Interesting. Do you still play?" She shook her head with a small laugh. "Not really. I haven't touched a piano in years." He glanced at the corner of the restaurant where an old grand piano sat. It was mostly ignored, dusty from D'Souza. No one played it anymore because the restaurant preferred recorded music. He looked back at her. "Well," he said, leaning forward, "how about this? I dare you to play something, just one song. I'll leave $100 tip if you do." Emma stared at him in surprise. "You're joking," he smiled. "No joke. One song, just to see if the fingers still remember." She looked over at the piano, then back at him. "I haven't played in a long time." "Exactly," he said. "That's what makes it interesting." Emma felt her heart start to race. The piano used to be her world. Her father had taught her when she was just 5 years old. She would spend hours practicing at home, dreaming of becoming a famous pianist one day. But everything changed when he died in a car accident. Her mother got sick soon after. Music became a luxury she could no longer afford. She had to grow up too fast, leave college, and find work. Part of her wanted to say no. It would be too embarrassing if she messed up in front of all these people. But another part of her, a small, hidden part, wanted to feel the keys under her fingers again. Even just once. Emma looked at the man. His face was calm but encouraging. Something about him felt safe, like he wasn't going to laugh at her or judge her. "All right," she said quietly. "Just one song." She took off her apron and slowly walked to the piano. The restaurant was still buzzing with conversation, but a few people noticed her moving toward the piano and began to quiet down. The music from the speakers stopped, and a soft silence filled the room. Emma sat down on the bench. The seat felt familiar and strange at the same time. Her hands hovered over the keys. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her mind, she searched for something simple, something she could still remember, a lullaby her father used to play. She pressed a key gently, and it made a soft sound. Then another. Slowly, the notes came to her, like old friends. She started to play. At first it was shaky. Her fingers were stiff, and the keys felt cold. But then something happened. Her hands began to move on their own. The melody came back, the rhythm, the emotion. She played with her heart. Not for the people in the room, not for the money, but for herself, for the part of her that she had buried under work and worry and responsibility. The restaurant went silent. Every single person stopped what they were doing to listen. The soft melody filled the air, warm and tender. Some people turned in their seats. Others leaned forward. Even the kitchen staff peeked out to see what was happening. When Emma finished, she let the last note hang in the air before gently lifting her hands. She looked around nervously. There was a moment of silence, then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the whole room was applauding. Emma's cheeks turned red. She stood up quickly and gave a small, shy bow. She didn't know where to look. The man at table 12 was clapping too, but he wasn't smiling. He was staring at her with a serious expression, as if he had just seen something he hadn't expected. Emma returned to him, and he handed her the $100 bill. She tried to protest, but he held up his hand. "You've got something special," he said. "Don't waste it." She didn't know what to say. No one had said anything like that to her in years. As she walked back to the kitchen, her co-workers looked at her in shock. One of the chefs gave her a thumbs up. A bartender whispered, "I didn't know you could do that." Emma just smiled. Later that night, after the restaurant closed, she sat alone on the piano bench again. Her fingers touched the keys gently. The memory of the applause still echoed in her ears. For the first time in a long time, she felt something. More than just tiredness, she felt alive. And though she didn't know it yet, that one moment, that one dare, was about to change her life forever. Emma sat quietly in the staff room after her shift ended, her hands still trembling from the unexpected moment she had lived through just a short while ago. She could still feel the piano keys under her fingers, still hear the sound of the final note hanging in the air. Her heart was still beating faster than usual, not from nervousness anymore, but from something else, something she had not felt in years. A kind of joy, a kind of freedom. It was as if she had touched a piece of her old self that had been buried deep inside. When she walked home that night through the falling snow, everything around her seemed quieter, softer. Her heavy work shoes crunched over the icy sidewalk, and her breath made small clouds in the air. Her coat was too thin for the weather, but she hardly noticed. She was too busy thinking about the music, about the look on everyone's faces, about the way the rich man had stared at her as if she had done something amazing. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like more than just a waitress. At home, her little brother Adam was watching television with the sound turned low. Their mother was asleep in the bedroom. Emma sat beside Adam on the worn-out couch and smiled at him. "You won't believe what happened tonight," she whispered. "What?" he asked, curious. "I played the piano at work." Adam blinked. "Seriously?" Emma nodded. "In front of everyone. One of the customers dared me to." His eyes widened. "Did they like it?" "They clapped," she said. "The whole restaurant." "No way!" he laughed. "That's so cool." Emma looked down at her hands, her fingers slightly red from the cold. "It felt good. I forgot how much I missed it." Adam's face grew serious. "You were really good, Em. You always were. Maybe you should play again." She wanted to agree. But reality still hung around her like the winter wind. She had rent to pay, groceries to buy, medicine for her mother. She couldn't afford dreams. Not now. Not when so many people needed her. The next day at work, people kept whispering about her piano performance. Some staff clapped when she entered the kitchen. Others teased her gently. "The piano girl," they called her. Even the manager asked her where she had learned to play like that. Emma just smiled and said, "A long time ago." Then came another surprise. Late in the evening, the same rich man returned to the restaurant. This time, he wasn't alone. He had brought another man with him, a quiet, middle-aged guy with glasses and a serious face. The rich man smiled at Emma when she came to their table. "I was hoping you'd be working tonight," he said. Emma smiled nervously. "Yes, sir. Same shift as usual." He nodded toward the piano. "Think you could play something again?" Emma hesitated. She hadn't expected this. I guess I could, if it's allowed." The manager, watching from the corner, gave her a thumbs up. This time Emma didn't feel quite as nervous. She walked over to the piano, sat down, and gently placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes and played a simple tune. Something light, something playful. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of feeling. When she opened her eyes again, both men were watching her closely. The one with glasses looked surprised. After her short performance, she went back to their table to continue her job. But the rich man stopped her. "Sit down for a minute," he said kindly. "Don't worry, I've already spoken to your manager." Emma sat, unsure of what was going on. "My name is Richard Callahan," he said, offering his hand. "This, is Henry, a friend of mine. He used to be a music teacher. I told him about you last night." Emma shook their hands politely, still confused. Richard leaned forward. "I meant what I said yesterday. You have something special. That wasn't beginner's luck. That was talent." Emma looked down. "I haven't played in years. I just remembered an old song." Henry nodded. "That might be true, but even so, the way you feel the music, that's not something you can teach." She blushed. "Thank you." Richard smiled. "I have an idea. You may think it's crazy, but hear me out. I want to help you. Really help you. I'll pay for proper piano lessons, a good coach, studio time when you're ready. You don't owe me anything. I just want to see where your music can take you." Emma was silent for a long time. This had to be a joke, right? People didn't just walk into restaurants and offer to change your life. It felt like a story from a movie, not something real. "Why me?" she finally asked. Richard looked her straight in the eyes. "Because I've spent years looking for real, raw talent. I used to work in the music business before I retired. And last night, when you played, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. You reminded me of what music is really about." Henry added, "There's something honest in your playing." "That's rare." Emma felt her throat tighten. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to say yes. But doubt crept in like a shadow. "I don't have time," she whispered. "I have work. I have my family. I can't just quit and chase a dream." Richard's expression didn't change. "I'm not asking you to quit anything. I'm offering to make it easier. Lessons can be at night. I'll cover the cost. All I ask is that you show up and try." Emma didn't answer right away. Her heart was in a whirlwind. That night at home, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about what Richard had said. Her mother coughed softly in the next room. Adam was asleep with his headphones on. The house was quiet, but her mind was loud. What if she failed? What if she wasn't good enough? What if this whole thing turned out to be a cruel trick? And yet, what if it wasn't? The next morning, she called the number Richard had left on the back of his business card. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll try." Over the next few days, everything began to change. Richard connected her with a piano coach named Claire, a strict but kind woman who had worked with young talents before. The first lesson was terrifying. Emma had almost forgotten how to read music sheets, and her fingers cramped up after only 30 minutes. Claire didn't go easy on her. "You've got heart," Claire said after their first lesson. "But talent means nothing without discipline. Are you ready to work hard?" Emma nodded. "I am." She kept her job at the restaurant, working lunch and dinner shifts, then heading to Claire's apartment in the evenings for lessons. It was exhausting. Some nights she came home with sore hands and heavy eyes, but something inside her had come alive. She was doing more than just surviving. She was living again. Richard checked in regularly. Sometimes he came to her lessons. Other times, he just sent encouraging messages. He never treated her like a project. He treated her like a person. That made all the difference. Emma began to improve. The music came back to her like an old friend. Her fingers grew faster, more confident. She learned new pieces. She composed a short tune of her own. She played it for Claire one night, nervous but proud. Claire listened with her eyes closed. When Emma finished, she said, "You're almost ready." "Ready for what?" Emma asked. "To show the world who you are." Emma didn't know exactly what that meant, but deep inside, she hoped it meant something big. One evening, Richard asked her to come to a small recording studio downtown. It wasn't flashy, just a cozy room with a grand piano, some microphones, and a quiet engineer named Dan. "I want you to record your song," Richard said. "Just for fun." Emma played while Dan recorded. They did it 3 times. Then Dan edited the best version and saved it. A week later, Richard posted the video online. He didn't tell her right away. Emma found out when a customer at the restaurant showed her the video on their phone. "Isn't this you?" the woman asked. "You're amazing." The video had already been viewed thousands of times. In just a few days, that number turned into hundreds of thousands. People from all over the country were commenting, sharing, and asking about the Waitress pianist. Reporters started calling. A radio station asked for an interview. A local TV channel wanted her to perform live. Emma was stunned. She felt like she was in a dream, but it wasn't a dream. It was the beginning. She stood in her tiny kitchen one night watching the video on her cracked phone screen. Her mother sat beside her, smiling weakly. Adam stood behind her with wide eyes. "You're going to be famous," he whispered. Emma shook her head. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to play." And now, because of one chance, one moment, one daring stranger, she could. Emma's life began to change faster than she could understand. Just a few weeks ago, she was a simple waitress, serving food to strangers and returning home tired every night. Now people were recognizing her on the streets. Strangers smiled at her, asked for photos, or praised her music. Her video had gone viral. Millions of people had seen it. Blogs, news websites, and social media posts were filled with comments about the Waitress pianist, with magic in her fingers. But even as her fame grew, Emma stayed the same girl, humble, quiet, and unsure what all this really meant. Richard, the kind rich man who had believed in her from the start, stood by her side like a mentor. He was the one managing all the attention. He handled the phone calls, the interviews, and the sudden offers pouring in from talent agencies and music companies. Emma wasn't ready for all that. She was still working at the restaurant, still taking care of her mother and brother, still riding the same old bus to work every day. But slowly, the piano was becoming more than just a memory from the past. It was becoming her future. One cold morning, Emma met Richard and her coach Claire at a small cafe. The three of them sat in the corner, sipping warm drinks. Richard looked serious. "There's something we need to talk about," he said. "You've gotten an invitation to play in a music showcase next month." Emma looked up, confused. "What kind of showcase?" Claire answered. "It's a live event. A competition, really. Young musicians from around the country perform in front of an audience and music judges. It's not about winning prizes. It's about being seen. Agents, record labels, producers, they all attend." Emma stared at her coffee cup. "That sounds big." "It is," Richard said, "but it could change your life." Emma felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She had never played for a crowd like that. She had never even imagined such a thing. "What if I mess up?" she asked. "You won't," Claire said firmly. "Because we're going to prepare you. And because you have something they don't. You play with emotion. That's what people connect with." Emma agreed to do it, even though her hands shook at the thought. Every day after work, she trained with Claire for hours. They chose a song that meant something to her, something simple but powerful, her own composition. She practiced until her fingers ached. She dreamed about it at night. She even played parts of it in her head while walking to the store or riding the bus. Meanwhile, her family was proud beyond words. Adam talked about her to his school friends. Her mother cried quietly the first time she saw her daughter on TV. Emma smiled through it all, but deep down, she carried a pressure she didn't know how to explain. Everyone believed in her now. She couldn't let them down. The day of the showcase finally arrived. Emma wore a simple black dress Claire had bought for her. Her long hair was brushed neatly and she wore light makeup. She looked beautiful but not flashy. She still looked like Emma. The concert hall was bigger than anything she had ever seen. Hundreds of people filled the red velvet seats. Giant spotlights lit the stage. A grand piano sat at the center, waiting for her. Emma stood backstage, her heart pounding like a drum. Other performers walked by, confident young musicians with polished smiles and expensive clothes. Some were talking about their years of training, their music schools, the teachers they had studied with. Emma felt small, but then she remembered Richard's words. "They may have training, but you have truth." When it was her turn, her name was called. Emma Carter. The lights dimmed slightly. The audience clapped politely. Emma stepped onto the stage. For a moment she thought she might faint. Her legs felt weak. Her palms were sweating. But then she sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes. She thought of her father, who had first taught her how to play. She thought of her mother, sick but strong. She thought of Adam, her little brother who had never stopped believing in her. And she played. The music was soft at first, like a whisper. Then it grew, like a rising wave. The melody was simple, but every note carried feeling, pain, hope, joy, and love. She poured everything into it. Her struggles, her dreams, her heart. When she finished, the last note floated in the air like a feather. There was a silence in the hall. Then the clapping began. Not polite applause this time, but real, loud, emotional clapping. Some people stood up. Others shouted, "Bravo!" Emma stood slowly, unsure what to do. She gave a small bow and walked off stage, her heart still racing. Backstage, Claire hugged her tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." Richard was waiting too. His eyes were wet. "That," he said, "was magic." Later that night, They sat in a quiet corner of the hall as the judges spoke to the performers. One of them, a well-known music producer named David Lennox, walked directly toward Emma. "I've seen hundreds of musicians," he said, "but very few move me like you did tonight. Where did you train?" Emma smiled shyly. "I didn't," David chuckled. "Well, I'd like to change that. I run a label. We help young artists record their music and grow. If you're willing, I'd love to work with you." Emma didn't know what to say. It felt unreal. She looked at Richard and Claire. They both nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's talk." In the weeks that followed, Emma met with David and his team. They helped her create a plan to record her own album, a mix of original pieces and classical renditions. They found a recording studio, scheduled sessions, and gave her a chance to work with other musicians. It was all new to her, sometimes overwhelming, but also exciting. She still worked part-time at the restaurant, mostly because she wasn't ready to let go of the normal life completely. She still took care of her mom and helped Adam with homework. But her time was now split between two worlds, the ordinary and the extraordinary. During one of her recording sessions, a moment happened that Emma would never forget. She was playing one of her slower, emotional pieces when the sound engineer stopped the session and turned on the microphone. "There's someone here who wants to meet you," he said. A tall woman entered the room. Emma recognized her immediately. Her name was Joanna Fields, one of the most respected classical pianists in the country. "I heard your showcase performance," Joanna said, smiling. "I was amazed. I wanted to meet you in person." Emma couldn't believe it. "Thank you," she said. "I never imagined someone like you would notice me." Joanna nodded. "Talent like yours isn't easy to ignore. If you ever want to collaborate or perform together, let me know." It felt like a dream. Everything was moving so fast. But Emma remained grounded. She kept reminding herself of who she was and where she came from. The album took 2 months to complete. It was simple, honest, and full of feeling. When it was finally released, the reaction was better than anyone expected. People from all over the world downloaded her songs. They wrote to her about how the music made them cry, or feel peaceful, or remember something they had lost. Emma read every message with tears in her eyes. One day she came home to find her mother waiting with an envelope. Inside it was a letter. Emma had been invited to perform at a charity gala in New York City. It was a formal event with celebrities, businessmen, and artists. The invitation came with a plane ticket, a hotel reservation, and a note. "We believe your music can touch the world." Emma looked at her mother, who smiled and said, "Go, show them who you are." Emma flew to New York with Richard by her side. The hotel was grand. The hall where the event took place was like something out of a movie. Golden walls, crystal chandeliers, and a polished black piano in the center of the stage. She wore a dress someone had gifted her, a deep blue gown that sparkled under the lights. Her hair was tied back in soft curls. When she walked onto the stage, the room went silent. She played the same song she had played at the showcase, the one that had started everything, and once again, the room gasped. When the song ended, the applause was deafening. People stood up, clapping, some even wiping away tears. After the performance, a famous actor came up to her and said, "You reminded me why music matters." And in that moment, Emma realized something important. It had never been about fame or money or being better than others. It had always been about connection. She had played piano for herself first, then for her family, and now, finally, for the world. Her music had become her voice, and that voice had reached people's hearts. As she looked around the grand hall, Emma thought about her first night at the restaurant. The cold floors, the heavy trays, the piano in the corner, dusty and forgotten. She had sat at that piano once, just for a dare. And now, because of that one moment, her whole life had changed. But she was still the same Emma. just a girl with music in her heart. After her unforgettable performance in New York City, Emma's world changed even more. What had started with a simple dare in a restaurant had now become something much bigger than she had ever imagined. Her name began appearing in music magazines, newspapers, and online articles. People didn't just know her as a waitress pianist anymore. They called her a rising star, a new voice in music that people needed to hear. But for Emma, all of it still felt like a dream. Even though she was receiving so much attention, Emma stayed grounded. She didn't let fame go to her head. She still went home to her small apartment, helped her brother with schoolwork, cooked dinner for her mother, and cleaned up afterward. She still smiled at neighbors, still said thank you to the bus driver, and still made time to play at the restaurant once a week, even though she didn't need to work there anymore. That old piano in the corner had started it all. It had become her good luck charm, a quiet reminder of where she had come from. More and more people reached out to her, asking her to perform at events, festivals, and even in television shows. Richard helped her choose the right offers, always, making sure that Emma didn't get too overwhelmed. He kept her schedule balanced so she could still spend time with her family and continue learning with her coach, Claire. Claire was strict but kind. She pushed Emma to be better, to learn new techniques, and to stay true to her emotional style. Claire believed that emotion and discipline together could create something powerful. Emma also started writing her own music more seriously. She would sit at her keyboard late at night, eyes closed, fingers dancing slowly on the keys, letting the melodies come to her like whispers from the past. Some songs were soft and sad, others hopeful and strong. She wrote about her life, her father's memory, her struggles, and her dreams. When she recorded her second album, she filled it with these songs, and to her surprise, people loved it even more than the first. One day, Richard received a phone call from someone unexpected, the director of the London Royal Music Hall. He wanted Emma to perform as the guest pianist at their winter concert, one of the biggest classical events in the country. Emma was shocked. It felt like something from another world. Big names performed there, artists who had trained for years in famous schools. She was just a girl from a small town, who had learned piano from her father in a tiny living room. "I don't think I'm ready," she told Richard, her voice shaking. "You're more than ready," he said gently. "You just don't realize it yet." Claire agreed to help her prepare. They worked harder than ever before. For 2 months, Emma practiced day and night. She picked a song that was challenging but beautiful, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It was a piece she had loved since she was young. Her father used to play it late at night, when the house was quiet, and she would listen from the hallway, half asleep, but completely moved by the sound. She practiced each note, each pause, each emotion. She tried to feel the music, not just play it. Claire guided her every step, helping her improve her control, her timing, and her expression. The night of the concert arrived. Emma traveled to London with her mother, Adam, Richard, and Claire. The city was covered in lights, glowing in the cold winter air. The Royal Music Hall was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Gold walls, red velvet curtains, shining chandeliers, and rows of seats that stretched far into the distance. Backstage, Emma stood in front of a mirror. Her heart pounded. She had worn a long, elegant black dress with silver details, and her hair was tied in a soft bun. Claire walked up behind her and smiled. "You look like you belong here," she said. Emma shook her head. "I'm still scared." "It's okay to be scared. Just don't let it stop you," Claire replied. The announcer called her name. The room was full with thousands of people watching. Emma walked slowly to the stage. The grand piano sat under a bright spotlight. She took a deep breath and sat down. The silence was heavy. Then she began to play. The first note echoed like a drop of water in a still lake. Then came the next, and the next. The room seemed to disappear around her. It was just her and the music. Her fingers moved gently, perfectly. Every sound carried a feeling, a story, a memory. She poured herself into the piece, every sadness she had known, every moment of hope, every loss, every dream. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a second. Then the applause began, loud and long. People stood up, some even shouted her name. Emma bowed slowly, blinking back tears. As she walked off stage, her mother hugged her tightly, her face glowing with pride. Adam gave her a thumbs up, his eyes shining. Backstage, the concert director walked over to her with a wide smile. "That," he said, "was one of the most heartfelt performances we've had in years." After that night, Emma's reputation reached a whole new level. Music schools asked her to speak to students. Magazines asked her to share her story. But the most meaningful moment came a week later when she received a letter from a young girl. The letter read, "Dear Emma, I watched your performance at the Royal Hall. I'm also a girl from a small town, and I've always wanted to play the piano. But I thought someone like me could never be a musician. After watching you, I believe I can. Thank you." Emma cried while reading it. She realized that her journey was not just her own anymore. She was inspiring others, people like her who had dreams but didn't think they had a chance. She decided to use her platform for good. With Richard's help, she started a small foundation to provide free music lessons for children from poor families. She wanted to make sure that talent and passion were never ignored, just because someone couldn't afford classes. She even returned to her old restaurant one evening and donated a new piano for others to play. Meanwhile, her relationship with her family grew even stronger. Her mother's health was improving slowly, and they could now afford better care. Adam had started playing a small keyboard Emma had bought him, and sometimes they would sit and play simple songs together, laughing like children. But Emma also learned that fame came with challenges. People began judging her online, some praising her, some criticizing her. They said she was too simple, or not trained enough, or lucky. At first, their words hurt her deeply. She cried, thinking maybe they were right. Claire noticed and sat with her one evening. "Not everyone will understand you," she said, "but you must keep playing. Not for them, for yourself, for the people who need your music." Emma nodded. She realized that being an artist meant being strong, open, and honest, even when people didn't approve. She returned to the studio and began recording her third album. This time, it was a mix of classical pieces and her own work. The theme of the album was beginnings. Each song told a different part of her journey. The pain of losing her father, the struggle of working long hours, the joy of being discovered, and the peace she found in music. She also included a song called "The Dare," a soft, emotional piece that captured the moment everything had started. That night at the restaurant, when Richard had asked her to sit at the piano. It was her way of saying thank you to the moment that had changed her life. The album was released and became an instant success. But more than that, it touched people. Messages poured in from around the world. Letters, emails, videos. People said her music helped them heal, find hope, or simply feel something real. Emma had become more than a pianist. She had become a symbol of courage, simplicity, and beauty. One day, while walking through her neighborhood, Emma heard someone playing the piano from a window. She stopped and listened. It was one of her own songs. A child was playing it, slowly, a little off-key, but with heart. Emma smiled. This was what it was all about. Not the applause, not the lights, not the articles or awards. It was about reaching people. And in that moment, she felt more sure than ever that she was doing exactly what she was meant to do. She was just a girl who had once dared to play the piano. And because of that one choice, she had brought music, hope, and magic into the lives of so many. After everything that had happened in her life, From being a quiet waitress with hidden dreams to becoming a rising star in the world of music, Emma had learned one important thing. The journey never really ends. It only changes. Each new step was not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new one. And as her name became more well-known, so did her responsibilities, challenges, and dreams. Emma was now invited to perform around the world. She went to cities she had never even imagined visiting: Paris, Rome, Tokyo, and Sydney. In every concert hall, there were people who came just to hear her play, many of them moved by her story more than her fame. They saw something in her they could relate to, a person who came from nothing but believed in something. Even with the busy schedule and travel, Emma stayed close to her values. She made sure that each performance was filled with emotion, not just skill. She didn't want to become just another name in the music industry. She wanted to stay real, stay honest, and most importantly, stay herself. Her small foundation for young musicians had started growing. What began as a few free classes in her town turned into a national program. Volunteers joined, and music teachers across the country offered free lessons to underprivileged children. Emma personally visited many of these places, surprising kids, by playing beside them, encouraging them, and reminding them that dreams were never too far if they worked hard and believed in themselves. Emma also found time to return to the restaurant where it all began. The old owner had retired, and a new family had taken over. They kept the piano because people came in asking about it, curious to see where Emma once played. On quiet evenings, Emma would come in, sit at the piano without any big announcements, and play a few soft pieces. The customers would freeze, their spoons halfway to their mouths, listening to the music like it was something magical. She never told them who she was. Some recognized her, others didn't. But that didn't matter. To her, she played for the joy of it. One day a letter came from a famous film director who had watched her perform at the Royal Music Hall. He wanted her to compose music for a new film, a story about hope, struggle, and music. Emma was nervous. She had never written for a movie before. But with the encouragement of her team, and the memory of her father always whispering in her heart, she accepted. She poured her soul into the project. For weeks she watched scenes, wrote pieces, and matched music to emotion. The film's main character was a little girl who dreamed of becoming a pianist but faced many obstacles. Emma saw herself in that character and cried while writing the theme song. When the film was released, people praised not only the story, but also the music. One critic wrote, "The music speaks louder than the dialogue. It touches something deep inside." That year, Emma was invited to the Global Music Awards. She had never cared much about awards or fancy events, but this time was special because her mother and brother were with her. They sat in the audience, proud and smiling. When Emma's name was called as Best Original Score for a Motion Picture, she walked to the stage slowly, heart pounding, hands cold. She stood in front of the microphone, holding the shiny golden trophy, and said softly, "I'm just a girl who once played a piano in a restaurant. I didn't have money. I didn't have training. But I had music in my heart. If you have something inside you that won't let go, whether it's music, writing, dancing, or dreaming, don't give up. Even if the world doesn't see it yet, that doesn't mean it isn't there. Believe in it. Feed it. Let it grow. And one day, it will shine." The audience stood up and applauded. But Emma didn't smile for the cameras. Her eyes went straight to her mother and brother. That moment belonged to them as much as to her. They had been her strength, her reason, her home. Back in her town, Emma was now more than just a local hero. A community center was named after her. But even with all this success, she still walked the same streets, greeted the same neighbors, and visited the same small bookstore she loved as a teenager. Fame hadn't changed her. It had just given her more ways to help others. She also started writing a book, not about fame or success, but about her life before it all. She wanted to tell the full story. The sadness, the loneliness, the courage, the music, the moments that hurt, and the ones that healed. The book was simple, written in her own words, filled with small sketches, song notes, and little memories. The title was A Dare and a Dream. People loved it, not because it was perfectly written, but because it was honest. Just like her music, her words touched hearts. Readers sent letters saying they had found hope again after reading it. One woman wrote, "After losing my husband, I stopped playing the violin. But after reading your book, I took it out again. Thank you for reminding me that it's never too late." These letters meant more to Emma than any award. As time passed, Emma started thinking about the next generation. She began mentoring young artists, not just in music but also in life. She taught them how to stay true to themselves, how to manage the pressure, and how to never forget where they came from. One of her students, a shy boy named Leo, reminded her so much of herself. He barely spoke, but when he touched the keys, it was like the piano understood him. Emma guided him patiently, teaching him with love, not just lessons. One day, Leo played at a local concert, and his mother cried the whole time. Emma watched quietly from the back, heart full. Her own family life had become peaceful. Her mother was healthy now and spent most of her days gardening and cooking, proud of her daughter's journey. Adam had grown into a fine young man and was accepted into a music school. He still played the keyboard Emma had given him, and sometimes they even performed together at charity events. One evening, Emma sat at home, sipping tea while watching the sunset. The light from the window fell on her piano. She stood up, walked over, and sat down. She placed her hands gently on the keys and started playing a melody she had never played before. It came to her naturally, like a story finally ready to be told. She called it The First Note. It was soft, warm, and full of everything she had lived. Every tear, every laugh, every challenge, every moment of beauty. As she played, she didn't think of applause or crowds. She didn't think of fame or awards. She just remembered the moment when Richard dared her to play, when the whole room gasped, and when everything had changed. And she smiled, because in the end, it had all started with one small choice. A moment of courage. A dare. And that dare had become a doorway to a life more beautiful than she had ever imagined. She had taken a chance, and she had become a light in the world, through her music, her kindness, her strength, and her belief that even the quietest dream deserves to be heard.